Hi everybody, Rick Firestone here. I'm one of the hosts of Pixel Project Radio. I just got back from a future timeline, a time in the future where something chaotic, something horrible had happened, and I came back on my time machine to tell you about it. I learned that there exists in the future a time where I never told you about our Patreon page, and I had to come back and correct that. I couldn't let that stand. I have to make the future right. So, here it is. If you want to be like the other folks who kindly support Pixel Project Radio, you can do so by going to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. We are entirely listener supported. We don't do any ads or anything like that. And it's all from the fans of the show that like what we do and want to support small artists. You can head over to that page, and for as little as $2 a month, you'll be able to get access to such bonus content like extra episodes, the ability to vote in terms of what content you want to hear us do, receiving our schedule in advance, and more. There are also extra tiers that come with extra goodies if you're so inclined. My two very special guests on this show are members of the Patreon themselves, as I am to theirs. You'll hear a little more about that at the end of the episode. But again, if you would like to support two small artists, that is Ben and myself, continue making the art that we love to make for you, you can do that by heading, once again, to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. Thanks. Now let's get into part 2 of Chrono Trigger. This is a part 2, so I don't want to reuse an intro that I used for the last time. I wonder what music I could insert as an introduction. Welcome back, everybody, to Pixel Project Radio. I am your host, Rick Firestone, and I'm joined again by special guests, very special guests, Dave Jackson from Tales From The Backlog and Ryan Yingling from List Off Podcast. Thanks again for joining me, boys. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, good to be back, dude.
Yeehaw! Let's get it.
Ryan's bringing the energy.
Yeehaw, indeed.
I'm bringing something. Bringing energy. It makes up for my bad memory.
Yes, so if you're listening to this, we've a couple of things. So first of all, we did our intro episode to Chrono Trigger, I guess you could say, previously, about a month back. We did not expect for it to run so long. That is largely on me. I've never been good at plotting out time for planning. I always estimate about 30% to 40% too little time. But we figured we wanted to not skimp on the episode, so we decided to do an extra sode. However, we also all have 9-to-5 jobs and families. 2 of the 3 of us have wives, so
I do have a few, so it's accurate.
Yeah.
So we're going to do our best to get through this. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a blast. Maybe not a scholarly firsthand source in terms of total info and accuracy, but hey, that's not why you come to podcasts. If you're coming to podcasts for scholarly firsthand sources, you're not listening to us.
That's right. You come for 3 drunk dudes talking about stuff. I'm sorry.
I must have missed.
I'm sober. Full disclosure.
I missed the memo. I've got water with Mio in it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I got a Diet Dr. Pepper. Someone take my keys.
Yeah,
Hurry
I
up.
haven't had a drink in 3 years now, so yeah, there you go.
I'm just gonna cut this out. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna clown. I'm not gonna clown on that.
It's all good.
I was gonna be like, "Oh, Mr. Sober here," but no, that's okay. Anyway,
No, you can clown on it. No, you can clown on it. It's cool. Look at me, bro. I don't even drink. Oh, I'm so fucking cool. This is me on my high horse looking down on you.
So last time, if you remember tuning in, if you haven't, go listen to the first episode because there's a lot of really fascinating stuff that we talk about within the music and within the development history. This is a really fascinating game from top to bottom, but today is going to sort of be all story. We're going to do our best to get through it quickly. I don't want another 2.5-hour episode, so we'll do our best to get through it quickly, talk about the various characters, boss fights, and story beats, and then we'll bring it on home. What do you say, boys? You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely.
So last time we left off, we had just met our friend Robo. We've just met Robo, and what we're in the Proto Dome, I believe, and we're heading over to this other dome. We're in 2300 AD. We're in the sort of Fallout-esque nuclear post-apocalyptic sort of landscape. Very cool. I really like this sort of landscape in video games, especially in, obviously things like Fallout. But I think it's done pretty well here. We mentioned last time talking to all the inhabitants to hear about the desolate wasteland of a home that they have. Now we are in another dungeon here. We are going through it. It's pretty run-of-the-mill. But notably at the end here, we are going to be fighting a bunch of Robo's friends. And I don't know about you guys, but this game makes me laugh out loud in a couple spots. This is definitely one of them. As you're leaving this dome that you're going through, Robo encounters a bunch of his friends. They look just like him, but with a different color palette. And he says, these are my friends. It's so good to see everybody. And they promptly just haymaker him and beat the living shit out of him.
Yeah. It's a good move. You have this moment. I remember playing through it for the first time where he sticks up for you, and you're like, "Yeah, get him, Robo!" And then it's just like, "Oh man, this went horribly wrong."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when keeping it real goes wrong.
They do the whole, you're defective, and that's why we have to dispose of you. It has the cadence of being super sad, especially with Mitsuda's music. Really adds a lot here, but at this time, I didn't feel like I knew the character well enough to feel anything. So
yeah, they add a lot of that later, and it's effective when it's added later. But it would have been nice to know why he's considered defective in this instance, and things like that they kind of expand upon later on.
Yeah, I know that this is a scene that's supposed to be like, oh no, not Robo, not my good buddy Robo that I met 5 minutes ago, but it really just doesn't have that effect for me. I don't know. I'm kind of with you there, Rick.
It's fine enough. So we take care of all of Robo's friends. This fight can be a little tough because they all tend to attack right after one another. So the AoE attacks like Cyclone are very good here. But we were able to best them. Marl is able to get Robo out of the sort of vent that the robots had beat him up and put him in, but he's super broken. So we drag him back across the wasteland, across the world map, to Luca, who's able to fix him overnight. The next morning, they all have a cliche, we're all friends now, I want to join the cause kind of thing. Robot characters for me are very hit and miss. I think about another prominent robot character that I actually don't know if you guys have played this game, is Magus in Persona 3.
No.
Not me.
I think it's a deeper character, but it's mostly the same in terms of general plot beats, mostly. Do not at me. Do not at me. Come back in January whenever we do an episode proper on it. But do not at me. I don't want to hear it.
I'm kind of with you on the robots, and Robo in particular. This is not a game where it's the robot is trying to learn what it means to be human or something. He's just a robot doing robot stuff, and it's very simple.
Well, I think if it were that former, if it was a robot trying to learn how to be human, I think I would like it even less. I'm glad that he's just a robot and he's just there.
I just meant there's not that. There's not the iRobot, rules of robotics or something like the Asimov, 3 rules or something. He's just a robot. There's nothing else going on.
I thought you were talking about my vacuum for a second. iRobot. So where do you guys land on droids? Where do they fit into this spectrum? Because I'm a big fan of droids. All right. I grow emotionally attached to droids, and I consider them to be robots.
Yeah.
So, but they're very human. Right?
When Robo's in pieces and they're carrying him around to get reassembled, I just thought in Star Wars when C-3PO gets dismantled and stuff.
He's a backpack, yeah.
Yeah.
That upset me horribly as a child. And then I think about BD-1, and it's I never want to see any harm come to BD-1 from Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
And I didn't. You're accurate. At this point, there was none of that attachment for Robo whatsoever.
Yeah. It's funny that we're talking about this sort of humanity within machines in this episode. I'm playing through Xenosaga episode 1 right now, and Without spoiling too much of it, there is a character that his body is entirely cyborg, but his brain from when he was alive is still human, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this new sort of, call it race, called Realians, that are essentially as close to human as you can be while still being artificial, to the point where the government enacted like human rights, and it becomes a point of like pushback with some of the actual humans. It's all pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think the notion of where is that line drawn and what is that line, it's an interesting one to toy with. I'm glad that Chrono Trigger doesn't toy with it, to be fair.
Yeah.
Right.
It would get in the way. It doesn't have anything else to do with like anything else going on. Hey, Rick, if you like games about robots that are so close to humans that they have to enact
I know what you're gonna
rights
say.
for,
Here we go.
your buddy David Cage has a game for you.
Yeah.
Oh, please do tell.
Different podcast, Rick. I'll come back for that episode, okay? Just for
I know
you, buddy.
we're talking about games and stuff here, but I feel like this is something that we're really going to have to consider in the not so distant future at the rate we're going with AI and things of that nature. Like I know it seems ridiculous to some people listening, but like honestly, I don't think we're too far away from like achieving something that is close to human.
Yeah, definitely not. It's coming. Better
Like
hope there's
Everett's
not
like-
robot podcasters replacing us.
They already
Coming
did
soon.
that. They already
Did
did
that?
that. They did a
Shit.
fully AI podcast. And of all people, I think it was like they had Joe Rogan interviewing Steve Jobs, and it was all AI generated. And I have not listened to it because
Yeah.
I refuse to. But
That
know.
sounds dumb as fuck, and I'm not listening to that.
yeah.
We already pretty much have the perfect link between AI and humans in the form of Zuck himself, so it's mass production and cannot be far behind. Speaking of interesting characters, we are about to meet two of them. I'm going to push us along just a little bit. We are coming to an area of the game that I think is super interesting, but there's not a lot done with it, and that is the end of time. So after we all decide, Robo's going to help us, we go through a gate, and instead of ending up back in our time where we think we're going to, we end up at the end of time. It's essentially this void with a platform, and there's a mysterious old man there who explains the situation that, more and more people are washing up here, which spells bad news. Something is pushing and stressing the flow of time, which is causing the way that they describe it is people that end up at the end of time. It's sort of like driftwood washing up on a beach. It's not the final destination. You never expected to be there. I don't know if this has been done before. I watched Doctor Who a very long time ago and never actually finished it. This is such a cool concept, but it's only used here as a means of storing your extra party members. There's nothing more intricate about it. That is pretty much it.
Yeah. The only other thing that's going on there is that Specchio is hanging out there, and you can go teach your characters magic and get your ass beat in a fight anytime you want. But other than that, not much going on. Did you guys ever beat him or even get close?
No.
No.
I got trashed every time. Even like
Absolutely.
right before I was going to go take on Lavos, and I was like ready for the end game. I was like, I'm going to go fight Specchio, and he just wiped the floor with me again. And I was like, okay, I don't, maybe new game plus 6, you can fight him, something like that. I don't know.
I'm not the biggest fan of Specchio's whole thing to begin with, because that's how you get magic in the game, is you take your characters to Specchio, you talk to them. He explains that Isla can't, we're going to meet Isla pretty soon, but she can't get magic because she was born before magic was quote unquote invented. And he basically calls Robo an unholy being, and because of that, he can't use magic. But he's like, your machine tools will match it or whatever. But you take your characters there to learn magic, and after they get to a certain level, you take them to Specchio. He kind of unlocks the ability to learn Ice 2 or Light 2. I don't like that. I wish that it would just be purely leveling or something relating to equipment. I don't know. Not the biggest fan of this, but it's pretty painless. I don't think you have to fight him to unlock them.
No,
you don't have to. Yeah, but I kind of agree. Like, if I had somehow missed this, just kind of pressing A through conversations like I tend to do sometimes when dialogue's not the most interesting, it would have been really annoying to be like, why do I not have any magic? And then they're like, oh, you got to take your characters back. And even if you do know it, just the knowledge that like, this is before you can kind of get your airship to travel through time to wherever you want on demand. You got to go back there every time you get a new character and check it out. But I thought it was really funny that he's like, Ayla, you were here before magic. Sorry, no can do. And Robo, I don't know what the fuck you are, but I'm not teaching you magic.
Yeah, I mean, it benefits from not having a whole lot of characters in the game. It never felt too tedious for me. Like, you have to go back to the end of time anyway. It's really just a different room at the end of time. So
yeah,
it never felt bad to me personally.
Not bad, just an extra step. Not the worst. Plus, Specchio's got good music, as you're probably hearing or already heard. At this point, we've got a couple of different options where we can go. The game kind of strongly hints where you need to go, but you can go to other times if you want. Our options are 65 million BC, 2300 AD, which is where we just came from, or 1000 AD. So for the story, we're going to the latter. But this time we don't pop out in our house, we pop out in Medina, in the closet of a fiend / mystic, no less.
I love that. just a fun little thing that like you just show up in someone's cupboard, and that's where your portal is. And every time you want to use it, back in the house, back in the cupboard, people are sitting at the kitchen table eating breakfast or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, there's those humans again."
And that's what it is. They're at the dinner table or breakfast table.
Yeah.
We should say too. I can't remember if we clarified this in episode 1, but fiends and mystics are the same thing. They're a sort of race of monsters, to put it succinctly. It's just one port of the game. We'll call it one and the other another, but they're the same thing. So you appear there and you get out. You're in Medina. This is a town that's sort of full of the ancestors of the mystics / the fiends. They still worship Magus here. They believe that Magus created Lavos. This is sort of expanded upon later, but they're kind of separate from your area. And the fortunately enough, though, the guys whose house we pop up in, they're pretty chill. They don't really care. They're not going to narc on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way they say that's pretty funny too. I forget the exact line, but they're like, "Hey, it's cool. Like, you know, we forgive you. We actually don't think people are that bad."
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's like, oh, maybe the people on the other side aren't so bad after all.
We're not so different, you and I.
Truly. So they actually allude to visiting an old man in the mountains. And I believe that's beyond Hekron Cave or in Hekron Cave. But that's where we're going right now. There's a market here, there's an inn here, and the way that I have this written doesn't make sense to me. I said in my notes you can also visit Melchior here. He's not past the cave, right? He's just on the outskirts of town, if I'm remembering correctly.
I don't remember specifically, but I think he's just got a house.
Yeah, I think so too, because he's specifically the only other human that's living around Medina. We don't know much about him at this point, save that you can buy some items from him, which are actually, they're fine items, but you don't really need them. But right now, our goal is the cave. This cave pretty much just teaches you that physical and magic attacks are going to deal with different enemies in different ways. If I'm remembering correctly here, magic is kind of what you want to be prioritizing. And since we just got it from Specchio, all the better. There's a boss here that's not too difficult.
Hekron, of all names. Like, who knew?
the namesake of the cave. It's when they were naming this cave, he came along and he was like, we're going to call this Hekron Cave. My name is Hekron.
It's my cave now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's my cave now, get out.
And when you beat him, his last words kind of explain that Magus created Lavos, or so he says. So now we're kind of going back to the Middle Ages to stop the creation of Lavos. Because as we mentioned before, Lavos is what brings about 1999 and the end of the world, pre-Y2K. this game's version of Y2K. For all, and if you're a listener that is old enough to know what that is, we're with you.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Jeez, I still remember the piles of soup cans and D batteries in the basement leading up to that.
I did my first keg stand the New Year's Eve of 1999 going into 2000.
Nice.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Before we head off to the Middle Ages, we can stop by Lucas' house. You can get some pretty good armor if you continually stop back at Lucas' house from her dad to Bon.
Mm-hmm.
This is also if you saved one of the prisoners Fritz back when you were breaking out of prison, you can get 10 free mid-ethers, which is what he feels your life is worth. Which is
not a whole lot.
Here's 10 Cokes, buddy. We're square now.
Yeah.
Mid-ethers are pretty expensive, right? It's like giving you.
I mean, dude, we got to go to this classic RPG stuff here. Does money matter?
That's
like you definitely get to a point where money doesn't matter.
That's a good point.
You get to a point. Yeah.
I would say at this point
in the game, I kind of felt like I always had just enough money to buy new equipment for people when I got to town and not much more than that. And then you get to a point where you have like infinite money, basically.
Now, I don't know if they changed it for the DS version, but in the SNES version, like the things that aren't equipment are cheap enough to where even after you buy equipment, you'll have enough left over to get like 50 potions or heals or whatever.
Specifically, if you're a fan of Final Fantasy and you're coming over to play this, you might be shocked to find out that this game's version of a remedy that cures all status ailments, it's like the same cost as a potion. So you just stock up on those bad boys. You're never going to have to worry about status effects because you'll always have some of those. I'm with you. It's like, aside from equipment, you can just buy everything.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a just kind of old school JRPG issue in general, like mechanically, where the way that you get through a lot of the game is just buy 99 potions, and when you get hurt, use a potion. You're never going to run out. And you only really get in trouble if you get status effect or just like party wiped in one hit, basically. Or you can get in that loop of like get hit, heal, get hit again, heal again. That sucks. But that didn't really happen to me very often in Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, it happened to me once, but this low-key a big reason why I like JRPGs of this era. You could always get yourself out of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
After a brief stop at the End of Time, the End of Time is going to serve as our sort of hub. You can think of it as like an intersection to go between time periods, because we can't travel to, 65 million BC from 2300. Not yet, anyway. We go to Truce Canyon in the Middle Ages. So there are a couple of things that we can learn by talking to the townspeople here. We learn that the Fiend Lord's army, remember this is 400 years prior to the fiends and the mystics that we crashed in their house, in their pad. The Fiend Lord's army here is attempting to take Xanon Bridge. We also learn that the legendary hero has returned. There's a lot of talk about this legendary hero all throughout town. Eventually, we start hearing the name Cyrus come up a lot associated with this. For a while, I thought that this was Frog, because I knew Frog had a proper name, and I was like, oh, the legendary hero is Frog, because it kind of leads you to believe that.
Yeah, I think it points you in that direction, for sure.
This might have also just been a note that I put based on the games that I was playing at the time, but I really love how this era of JRPG has you talk to people, optional people, to learn the lore and the world building rather than just have info dumps at you. Like, I mean, like a lot of modern AAA games do. Games like Dark Souls don't do this. That's a lot of environmental storytelling, but
ring the bell.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Big fan of just talking to townspeople. It's great.
And in Chrono Trigger in particular, each town doesn't have too many people. So it's not like you have to go talk to 25 people in each town.
There are some when you do. Like there was one inn and bar where there's like 20 people in that room alone, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I really got to talk. I got to push A this many times.
It's real tough. It's a big workout. I mean, gaming's hard work, and
Hey, look.
my hat goes off to anyone who can complete any game. So
I'm not going down that road, but I am going down the road that like my mentality going into villages was very different at this stage in my life than it would have been 20 years earlier.
Yeah.
Right? Like
but
I would go through these games in my younger day and talk to everybody, literally not miss a soul.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, no, like I appreciate those info dumps. Give me that. Let me move on.
Okay.
And, like,
well, the other
the
point
gameplay.
that I was working toward was that in Chrono Trigger, they don't really have the problem, at least not in my memory, of like there's 15 people in town. One of them has like really crucial information that you need, and the other 14 just talk about the weather. And if you just get tired of talking to people, you might miss something like super important. And I don't really feel like that's how it goes in Chrono Trigger. So that's cool too.
I may be misremembering, but I think there's like one time when they do that. And I think it's when you're looking for that stupid kid.
There are definitely a couple of times when townspeople will have crucial information, but I think it's more or less relayed in the plot as you go. I don't think you'll miss anything if you just don't talk to anybody. It's just maybe not as satisfying.
Right. Because your characters, when they talk to each other, they often say, okay, next stop, Truce Canyon, stuff like that.
So we're heading back to the castle that we just got back from not too long ago. Everybody has stopped being... everybody has seemingly forgetted the attempted murder and kidnapping that they think we have done. Nobody's bringing that up at this point. But we can learn that the king was injured in the fight with Magus, and he's resting. Nobody's really paying you any mind. At this point, you have to talk to the chef here to sort of trigger him chasing you down to give you spiced jerky for the troops at the Xenon Bridge. I don't know. I had read that this scene sometimes doesn't trigger for some people. I didn't have that happen. I'm not sure if I went to the bridge first or not, but...
Yeah. I had to look in a guide for what to do because I couldn't get far enough. And finding out that I had to go back to the castle to get beef jerky for the troops was... when I read that, I was like, okay, all right. Because I would have found that out on my own without wandering around, No, I wouldn't have,
Yeah, I think that's an example of they expect you to just explore and talk to everybody to move the plot forward.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm personally fine with. I don't mind it. But, in 2022, you can look up a guide. And I don't think your experience was any less than mine for having looked up a guide on where to get the beef jerky.
Oh, I will say straight out, since we're in like the early stages of this episode, I played most of this game with a guide, like page by page with a guide, because I just found it to be more enjoyable that way, because I do mind wandering around aimlessly until I kind of talk to the right person or go to the right place at the right time. That really does bug me, especially in these older games where you don't have like a ton of places you can go at this point, but you have enough places where I just wanted to know where to go and what to do to move along.
So spiced jerky in hand, it's time to go off and give our little treats to the boys in bluish gray. The fiends are really messing them up on Xenon Bridge too. So as we're crossing the bridge, we find Ozzy the Eighth. He's resurrecting these dead soldiers to fight against us to stop us. I thought this was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to be fighting these like resurrected, slain soldiers as we're going over, and it ends with a colossal sort of zombie fight against somebody named Zombor. I thought this fight was a huge pain in the ass for me at the time because he was just easily like 2 and 3 shotting my characters. So you just have to constantly be healing, and he's got some resistances set up too that make it a bit challenging.
I love a good pixel art bridge, and this bridge scene when you're going across it and stuff, I thought looked really nice.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of everything that plays out here. We beat him. Obviously, Ozzy runs away because that's who he is, and we're heading south now. We get this new sort of village. as we're exploring this village, we're hearing more and more about the tales of this legendary hero, Cyrus, and we're also hearing now a tale about a sword called the Masamune. And this sword and this sword alone can slay the Fiend Lord. And story has it that it's off in the mountains to the east. This is also, I think Ryan might have brought this up earlier, this is where you find the father of the great hero. You talk to him and the first thing he says is, personally, I don't see it when it comes to his own kid, which I think is great.
Typical dad.
It's great, but it's also prescient because, spoiler alert, Tata is not the hero. It's pretty funny. Proceeding forward, we get to some cursed woods. There is a sign that says, quote, "No trespassing, ribbit." Immediately afterwards, we start killing frogs. So, really messed up. But Frog, proper Frog, our Frog, he lives here. He is happy to see us, but when he learns that the king has been hurt in the fight, he goes sad boy mode. He feels that everything is his fault. He's not a hero. He asks to be alone.
Yeah. Gotta have that melodrama.
I mean, this is kind of a motive for Frog throughout this entire first act. It's, he feels like he is failing as a hero, and we kind of learn why. Frog is one of the few characters with a fleshed out backstory and character development. But it's good. Mm-hmm. It's good. But we are going east still through the Denadoro Mountains because we're hearing about this dropped hero's medal that the supposed hero Tada has, and we're also hearing about Masamune.
All I know is once you see the name Masamune in a JRPG, you know you want it.
Yeah.
It's a weapon you want.
Yeah. We're on the quest for the sword.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, too, like the Masamune, I believe, I'm just going off the dome here. Masamune was a real sword, like a real katana. And the Masamune in this game is like a great sword, kind of like Excalibur.
Yeah.
So, I didn't actually do any research into this. I wonder if that was just maybe a translation thing. I doubt it because Ted Woolsey is generally pretty good with this, but Mazza and Mune, as we'll come to hear, that could have been a Woolseyism. That tricky Ted Woolsey pulling his
You think
tricks.
so?
I don't know.
Because when I saw that name, the Masamune, it looks Japanese to me, so I just assumed it's a Japanese name, and then there's no Woolseying behind it. Just that's I can't read Japanese, so I would be curious to know what the original script says.
Yeah, it could have just been like the writers chose that name and then just chose the picture of a cool looking sword.
Yeah.
It's a very common sword in early JRPGs. It's like all the early Final Fantasies have a Masamune. It actually was named after a medieval Japanese blacksmith, widely acclaimed as Japan's greatest swordsmith.
Well, there we go.
Thanks, Google.
Thanks, Ryan.
What would we do without Google? So as you go through the caves, you end up finding this little kid that's sort of playing in the caves. He says his name is Massa, or maybe you just see that his name is Massa. But as you approach the sword, the boy asks, is this why you're here? And if you say yes, he calls out for his brother, who is named Mune. And they have this little, humans are so foolish and not worthy bit of monologue before taking you on in a fight. They sort of morph into these like creatures. First round is not very difficult. Then they combine for a second round boss battle. A bit more challenging. I think I lost on this one at least once. Because they counterattack and have some pretty powerful attacks. But definitely more challenging for sure. Once you beat them, they turn back into their boy forms. And wonder if you'll be able to, quote, fix them and find their master. Because these kids are the sword, right? They turn back into...
What?
It's pretty funny. They turn back into their sword form and carry you down the mountain on the world map.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
You bring up a really good point. I just want to, before we get too far away from it, you're like, I don't know if they tell you their name is Massa and Mune, or if you just like see it. And I'm so surprised more people aren't like, you have me at a disadvantage. Like, how did you ever know my name? Because you read everybody's name in JRPGs. So like, it's kind of funny. Like, how many people actually introduce themselves in JRPGs, but you know their name because you're reading the text?
That's true. Can all be explained with time travel in this game.
True.
Yeah, it all comes down to that. As we're heading back out, we can go back to Tada's house, and it turns out, yeah, he's not actually the famed hero. You kind of could have guessed this because something that we didn't mention was when you enter the mountains, you see Tada running away, sort of tail between his legs, kind of scared to death. He tells us that he picked up the hero's medal because a froggish fellow dropped it as he limped out of a cave. So again,
I know that guy.
Hey, I know him. So
I've met a frog.
We're kind of thinking at this point, okay, Frog is our legendary hero. He gets the Masamune. Maybe he's the Cyrus person. So you take all of this back to Frog. He is surprised as all get out that you have the medal, that you talk to Tada. He's still kind of bummed because he doesn't feel that any of this matters because he's not worthy of Masamune and he can't face Magus. We get the hilt from the Masamune from him, though, because the sword is currently broken. So we need to get it fixed. The hilt has Melchior written on it, and turns out we know him. We met him back in 1000 AD, Medina. So that's where we're heading back to.
This kind of reminded me of Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. Got a broken sword, a guy who doesn't want it because of history that he doesn't want to face at the time. Kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, I didn't put that together at the time, but you're right. It is pretty similar. I'm not super familiar with Lord of the Rings, to be perfectly honest with you.
I mean, I don't know what the Masamune's history was. I don't know if it's as important as the sword that cut Sauron's hand off in Lord of the Rings, but still, it felt that way. The quest to reforge the sword so that its rightful bearer can take it, but he doesn't want it right away. Stuff like that.
Yeah, epic.
So Melchior is surprised to see us. He's shocked that we have the sword at all. He said that he might be able to fix it, but he needs some dreamstone, which is what the sword was made out of. It's this glittering red stone that used to be really prevalent in the before times, but it hasn't existed for a very, very long time. Hint, hint. And then Gaspar, I don't know if we know that he's Gaspar yet, but the man at the end of time suggests that you check the prehistoric era, which is where we're going.
Which, you probably could have figured that out.
Yeah. You've got 3 options at this point. You just came from 600. Yeah. So, yeah, 4 options, I suppose, but yeah. When we first drop in, we're faced immediately with just a ton of fighting against some reptites. And this is also where we get our first anime cutscene as Ryan's favorite character comes in. Ryan, who's coming in to save the day?
Isla.
Yeah, tell us about Ayla. What's her deal here?
She comes in and wrecks shop, man. It's what she does.
Yeah.
She's a brawler. Don't mess with Ayla.
Yeah, this is a really cool anime cutscene. I'm really glad that these are in the game. It looks
I wouldn't know.
it looks really great. The same thing plays out in the sprites, but I mean seeing it in that classic Akira Toriyama style, just super cool. I'm just such a big fan of that style. I'm always gonna like that style of animation.
Yeah, it's cool, and we got another really cool one coming up in a little bit too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The indisputably coolest one.
Yeah.
So Ayla sort of pins Chrono against the wall. She's smelling him, trying to figure out what's their deal. She can talk, it's interesting that 65 million BC. This game was originally in Japan, so presumably 65 million years ago, a primitive form of Japanese was spoken enough that they could understand each other. I find it interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't look into how Ayla speaks because I'd be interested to see just based on what I know about Japanese sentence structure, I'd be really interested to see how they had her speak. Because in English it's, me Ayla strong, you strong too, that kind of deal. I'm wondering how they would have.
She's strong man.
That kind of sums up Ayla's whole deal.
I was gonna say, if we know anything, and the only thing about Ayla, it is that she likes strong man.
Well, we know something else about her too. We know that she
kicks ass.
Okay, so we know a couple. We know a couple of tree things about Ayla here.
Yeah.
We know
And she's actually like a good leader too. She like forgives people, and I mean, come on, there's more to Ayla than just like and strongmen. I don't.
But
think that's-
it's mostly Ayla like strong man.
we also do learn that she's got some pretty villages, some pretty stones, and promises to give you many stones at her village, Ioka Village or Ioka Village. You can learn that the chief here supposedly has a pretty red stone too. So this is exactly what we're looking for. But we don't get to do any of that until we get to mingle with the locals, which is pretty cool. You get to partake in the dance babunga, which I'm still not sure how I feel about this track. Every time I hear it, it's not unsettling, that's not the right word, but like it does not elicit any positive feelings in me.
It's not exactly a dance track.
It's very intense.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it, if I'm remembering it correctly. It's probably playing right now.
If Robo is in your party, he has this line where he's like, he wonders if this is the best use of your time, like dancing and drinking. Luca is partaking in plenty of drink called Skull Smash, and she kind of chides you about it if you don't drink too, which is it's pretty funny. But you're going to have to do that pretty soon anyway. Because Ayla, after she tells you a little bit about the reptites, essentially they're just a reptilian race that are at war with Ayla's people, Ayla shows you the Dreamstone and says that it belongs to the strongest in her village, which is her. And she says that she'll battle you for it. But to her, that means a drinking contest. And that's what you do. You sit down and just endless bowls of Skull Smash, you get hammered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good time. So, like, I'm sure this doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but when I was playing it, I was like, how cool would that be to just go get, like, hammered, like, with some early man, you know? Like, that'd be cool.
It would be a very primal
communicate
feeling.
with them at all. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see it. I think that would be a blast. That's like, oh Jesus, we're getting into Joe.
You could like let go of so many like modern inhibitions, man. Go out there in a loincloth and just get smashed. And like you said, there has to be like some communication there, but as long as like you understand each other, you're good.
This is us talking about like getting in touch with our primal feelings. This is the descent into the Joe Rogan territory. This
No,
mark it here, folks. You heard it here first.
No, my primal feelings would just be like going running naked in the jungle. Like, I don't know, man. Ended up dead, you know?
They censored this, I think, in the North American release. Is that right? To like pork soup or dino pork. This was a question on the Retro Olympics when we were all there.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't like, you know, moonshine or whatever it is.
It was Jurassic pork
soup.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, and you got to be careful with that stuff. You
copyright.
Well, I mean, with the soup, I mean, you can't just be pounding down bowls of soup. You're gonna have a bad time.
Oh, that's true.
It's so funny. There are little winks and nods like this in so many of these early JRPGs. There's a line in Xenogears where they mention Star Trek, like of all things, like by name. It's by name, but like it's spelled differently, but it's clearly Star Trek.
Yeah,
it's very weird. Like I love how like wink nod these writers are at the players from this time. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you pass out because you're going toe to toe with a primitive person. And when you wake up, you realize that you've been burgled. They took your gate key too, so you are stuck now in 65 million BC. Pretty quickly, though, we find out that a boy from the tribe named Kino, he was the one that took the gate key. He was jealous of Chrono for being kind of strong. He thought that Ayla was into him. It's kind of silly, but it's fine. But the trouble is that he got robbed by the reptites. So now we have to go to their lair to get our stuff back.
Mm-hmm. Kuno doesn't care. Oh, Kino. Sorry. Kino.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Kuno took your stuff, pig.
Pigs love it in the dick. I can't imagine Kuno being in this.
Now, That would spice up this 65 million BC section a lot if you just throw Kuno in there. Why someone out there, if you're listening and you have any kind of like modding or ROM hacking ability, please put Kuno in here.
He would say so many slurs, and Ayla would be like, "What that mean? Boy, weak."
Yeah.
And
he would not last.
Kuno's not weak.
Yeah.
she would
wouldn't last in the pork soup drinking contest with Ayla. That's for sure.
Well, he wouldn't, but he would brag that his dad could.
Yeah.
God, I love that game so much. The Reptite's lair is not so bad. It's one of those dungeons where there are a lot of holes that you can jump down. This is kind of reminiscent if you grew up playing Pokemon, like with the rock tunnel and that sort of things. You can fall through the floor to get to different areas. Lots of treasure here. Pretty great. We catch up with Azala, who is the leader of the Reptites. He is exceedingly well spoken and wonders how the Quope apes managed to make the gate key. So we're kind of getting a bit of the world building with the Reptites versus the humans here. When you don't tell him about the gate key and basically just say, "Hey, we need it back," he sicks Nizbel on you.
Mm-hmm.
This is another fight that's got a pretty clear gimmick. Lightning shocks him and lowers his defense. Otherwise, you do like 10 damage. But after a few turns, he does like a darn near one-shotting attack. So you have to kind of balance shocking him, attacking him, and then defending.
Yeah.
Pretty fine. Like once you pick up on it, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And JRPGs don't always do this. I feel like the old ones especially don't always kind of signal these like boss mechanics ahead of time very well, where they're like, you need to learn that electric attacks do a lot to the Reptites. This game does, though, because you'll figure that out if you're just trying out different attacks, and then you fight a giant, dinosaur, hit it with lightning, see what happens. And I think this does a really good job. It's kind of something that bothers me in a lot of these older games where they're like, you should have learned this. And I'm like, how would I have learned that? But this one in particular sticks out as like, yes, they clearly taught you to use electricity here.
I don't often read my notes verbatim, but this is pretty funny to me because I don't remember writing this. After we beat Nizbel, Azala gives the gate key back after shouting that it's Reptites that rule the world, proving shitheads like Alex Jones right. I don't remember writing this. But it's pretty good. Ayla doesn't join the party just yet, but we are going back to the end of time because we now have the Dreamstone. Frog is shocked that, we've brought him the Mazimune, and this is kind of where we start to get Frog's background. Frog was his real name is Glenn. We find out he was a partner / kind of student of Cyrus, the hero that we've heard all about. Mm-hmm. Cyrus took Glenn to fight the Frog King to regain the hero's badge, but on their way out, they got ambushed by Magus and Ozzy, who break the Mazimune, which is Cyrus's sword, and murder Cyrus right in front of Glenn. They they beat him down and set him on fire. Stuff. And before he dies, he tells Glenn to use this chance to run and to protect the kingdom. Glenn is obviously in shock. He can't do anything. Ozzy comments that he looks like a frightened little frog with no pond to jump into, and that's exactly what Magus changes him into. This I wasn't expecting this scene to be so like hard hitting, given what we've seen up to this point. It was really good.
Yeah, you want to talk about like that earlier scene with Robo not quite hitting as strong as they maybe intended? This one definitely does, because you've had a lot more time with Frog and you've seen, obviously he feels like so much guilt about something that's happened, and now you saw what actually happened here and how he was like just totally unable to do anything. And if he says things like, I'm not worthy to wield this blade, now you see why he feels that way, and it is really good. This whole continuing storyline with Frog is, in my opinion, like by far the best storyline in this game. regardless of main plot, side quests, whatever. This is, and like there's a thing with Luca later that was really affecting too, but this is the story of Chrono Trigger as far as I'm concerned, and then you fight Lavos at the end, basically.
Yeah, I'm shocked that Frog isn't the main character, frankly.
Yeah.
You learn a little more about his backstory. You just see more interactions between him and Cyrus as they're, through their young adulthood. But our goal is Magus's castle, which is beyond this sort of cliff that we can't get past. But now that Frog has the Masamune, we get to the greatest anime scene in this entire game. He lifts the Masamune, and this is complete with Frog's theme just blaring, which is perfect. And he lifts the Masamune, summons a beam from God, and this like complete with Dragon Ball sound effects too. And he just cuts the mountain in half. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's great.
That's cool. Was there an animated scene for any of Glenn turning into Frog, or was that all just like in game for you guys?
I think it's in game.
Yeah, that was all in game.
Yeah. It was for me too, but it was, like you said, it was effective. It didn't lose anything by not being a cutscene for me personally. So, yeah, it's cool that you guys were so affected by it and saw the same thing I did, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I said this in part 1, but this is the one that really sticks out in my head. Like when you watch the Dragon Ball style anime cutscenes, you see it and it's like really cool. Like if you watch one of these anime cutscenes, make this the one that you watch.
Oh man, it's not the one I watched, but I will now.
Yeah, go watch it. It's fucking cool. And then when it's over though, they cut back to the game and they show you the pixelated version too.
Oh, cool.
Right afterwards. And that was a little bit jarring, but it still has like, I don't think it's nearly as good as the anime one, but it still does have like a really cool factor of him. We talked about how good the animations are in like the pixel sprites in part 1. This is one of those things. It's really, even in like the 16-bit style, him cutting open the mountain is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this area of the game has a lot of really cool stuff. Magus's castle, which we're going into, for example, is straight out of Castlevania. With brilliant sound design. Like you hear wailing and moaning in the background and crying. It's very good.
Yeah.
This is where Ozzy sicks a couple of his goons on you. Well, they're not really goons. They're pretty strong. Slash the swordsman and Flea the magician.
Yeah. Another of those like little cheeky pop culture references in JRPGs, right?
Yeah. How did you guys feel about these two?
I didn't feel one way or the other, but I think Ozzy, Slash, and Flea are all incredible, like cool musicians. So I was happy to see the names.
Yeah, I mean, it almost doesn't fit with the game you're playing, right? But it didn't detract from it. It didn't like completely take me out of the experience. It was more of a chuckle.
Yeah.
As a former guitar player, Slash kind of current guitar player and perpetual guitar enjoyer, I don't like Slash as a guitarist.
Oh, really?
Not at
really?
all.
Wow.
I think his solos are unique, but if you take away all of the effects, it's just a lot. It's a lot of the same generic like pentatonic riffs. I'm just not a fan of it. Poisonally. I always put him as one of my favorite lead guitar players ever, and not just because of the solos he plays. I love lead guitar played over other parts of the songs too, and I enjoy his version of that quite a bit.
Yeah, so I'm not like the biggest fan of this song, but his solo on November Rain is sick. Like it's incredible. I mean, you have to like that.
It's a good song.
But
I like that song.
I will also say that I fucking love Guns N' Roses to a point in their career.
Dude.
So like,
yeah, right.
Obviously,
correct.
I like Slash because I like Guns N' Roses a lot.
Me too. Yeah, absolutely. Like Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah. Some of the Use Your Illusions.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, if we're talking guitar players with the currently listed folks, Ozzy, Slash, and Flea. I mean, Ozzy, you've got. Tony Iommi, Randy Rhoads, my favorite of all time.
Yeah. He's incredible
and
too.
Flea, John Frusciante is like a fucking funk wizard. Well, not really, but like he's really good.
Yeah, and they're all insanely talented.
Anyway.
I like how I said that they're all like insanely talented, and I listed Ozzy in there. I mean, Ozzy's an entertainer and a decent singer, but not quite on the level of Slash and Flea.
Right.
Flea is like a magician here. Very interesting. Slash is just kind of a tough swordsman. He hits hard, he hits fast. Flea is like a magician that does a lot of debuffs against you, and makes it difficult for you to attack her. I don't remember, because Flea has a line that says, "Man or woman, it's all the same. Power is beauty, and I'm deliciously strong." I think Flea might be a man,
that sounds like Red Hot Chili Peppers lyrics. I'm not gonna lie.
but Flea takes the form as a woman, so I think that's where that comes from. Maybe Ozzy mentioned Flea as a. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. It's a really cool line.
Very cool though. Yeah, cool line. Great line.
After a few more fights, you're gonna come back into contact with Ozzy. Once again, he's yelling that he's in a pickle, and he dashes off. You've just got some dungeon mechanics here with axes and mechanized belts. Get through some tricks and japes and hijinks that Ozzy is throwing at you. One thing that we didn't mention is that a lot of the fiends here will they animate themselves as skeletons, but they'll also disguise themselves as Chrono's mom and Tabin and people that you know.
Yeah.
And when you talk to them, they'll say something horrifying about the souls of the damned or something, and then they turn into a fiend and get you. It's really cool. It's really really cool. But since Ozzy did say that Magus has likely summoned Lavos by now, we do need to hurry. There's another really cool anime cutscene here of Magus summoning something. It looks like he's summoning Lavos as Frog walks in. Again, it's main character vibes for Frog this whole way through.
Yeah.
But
and the beginning of a really big fake out, which I thought was great.
Yeah. This is the first time you fight Magus. It can be tricky if you're under leveled. I think I wrote down that I was level 23 at the time, and I was okay. I think I was kind of perpetually on the lower side of leveling, but it's not so bad, especially if you have Frog. His Mazimmune lowers the magic defense of Magus. When you beat him, this gigantic rumbling energy source appears, and we turns out Magus didn't create Lavos. He only summoned him here in 600 AD. There's this huge rumbling, and we're sucked into a gigantic time gate. And I'm still not clear on what this next scene means. We get a scene of Chrono laying in bed, being awoken by Marl, with the implication that they're married, based on the dialogue. Mm-hmm. This is before you wake up. You're actually back in Isla's time. I never got that scene. Was that just kind of flirting with the idea of multiple timelines?
Honestly, man, I hope not. Because this game's story is simple enough without trying to introduce multiple timelines. And I never got the feeling that even though this is a time-traveling game, that we're going to introduce multiple versions of characters and stuff like that.
No, it definitely read as a possible outcome to me. I saw it as oh, this is potentially how things could end up, right?
I think I just saw it as a dream. Just Chrono's having a dream. A little characterization for Chrono. We learned something about him. He wants to marry Marl. There we go.
Who?
Chrono has something to him, guys.
Who?
The guy on the box. I forget his name. Might be Chrono.
Oh, Frog.
Oh, yeah.
So once we wake up, we learn that the Reptites have burned down the northern woods and the neighboring Laruba village. And Isla is being blamed for this, saying that it's, from her desire to always fight, and that's what is bringing them destruction, which is a bit of characterization for Isla, to be fair. You get permission from the Elder to go to the Dactyls, and at this time I didn't know what that meant, but what that means is you're going to literally ride pterodactyls for backup.
Cool.
It is pretty cool. It's very cool. After you get on those, you're going into the Tyranno lair, because that's sort of where Azela is. Huge enemy encounter rate here. Did not like it.
I loved this part. Oh, what? I loved this part.
I didn't like how many encounters there were, I think is the thing.
Okay, I get that. I liked the climax of this section, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, me too. You're going through, you're clearing out reptites. You can free prisoners if you want, including Kino. And you also fight Nizbal, the dinosaur, again for a second time. But this area ends by fighting Azazel with the Black Tyranno, which is honestly a pretty cool boss design.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Super cool. You're fighting the giant T-Rex.
Yeah.
Like, dude, this is why I play time travel games.
It's pretty awesome. And at this point, Azazel goes down by magic. That's his weakness. Tyranno's defense will not lower until he does his countdown to his huge attack. The pro tip here is to have ruby vests equipped with everybody. There's a mechanic that you can do in the hunting grounds by gathering like fangs and pelts, and that's what you trade as currency to get items. So if you have,
which like I know we're breezing through that, but it was really cool how they mixed up currency for this section. Like, it was a totally different way to purchase things. I really appreciated that.
In the hunting grounds, did you guys fight the magical amphibian looking dude? I forget his name.
I tried. I couldn't find him.
Yeah. I was playing with a guide, so it still took me a minute, but I did eventually find it, and that helps out with kind of kitting out your characters a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never found him. I tried. And I don't mean to breeze through it. I'm just trying to get us. I don't want another
not at all,
3 hour
not at all.
episode.
No, I just wanted to make sure to like point out the fact that like that someone had the thought to mix up currency. Like, hey, you're in prehistory, like your money's no good here, kind of thing. It's neat.
Literally, we don't know what it is. Don't give it to us.
Yeah, exactly.
After the fight, the red star that Azazel has been mentioning, Lavos, comes crashing into Earth. This has a sort of implication that Lavos caused the Big Bang, which I'm kind of, or not the Big Bang. Jeez Louise, I meant the extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs, not the Big Bang. Oh my God, we're not telling the origin story here. But it kind of has that implication, which I think is pretty cool. I really like when fantasy games use real life things that happened as influences. I'm always going to be a fan of that. And
like, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the point where, like, after you're done with this, Lavos crashes down, destroys the Tyranno lair, and you get that. You get that. I think it's still a pixel cutscene of like Lavos coming down and crashing.
Yeah, completely wiping out the reptites. Azazel kind of has a final moment of peace where he accepts. I've written her death here. Azazel's. It doesn't matter, I suppose. Azazel accepts their death, just as being the will of the universe. Kino comes in with some pterodactyls, and we get out of there before that happens. What Dave said, where it crashes and kind of wipes everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Isla does offer to take Azazel. I don't mean to interrupt, Ryan. Which is another kind of character moment for Ayla. She's offering to take she prides herself on strength so much, and at this moment is offering to take somebody who she objectively is stronger than in this moment. Like, death is not for you. Like, come with us. But Azazel says, no.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, is that I really appreciated that it gives you this moment of where you're like, damn, like, did I just condemn this entire race of beings, by defeating them? But thankfully, Isla does have that moment where she kind of offers mercy, and Azazel refuses.
But this is the moment where we can see Lavos wasn't made in 600. He's been here since the prehistoric era. I can't quite remember. Maybe my notes will illuminate me. I don't remember if it's explained why he crashed to the Earth, or if it was just something that happened and everybody took advantage of that.
I think it's just like Lavos is a traveling eldritch horror that finds a new place, sucks it dry of energy, and then sends its spawn out into the universe to continue.
Just a fact of the
Lavos
universe.
is hungry.
Lavos leaves behind a time gate, which will become a recurring thing. And we hop in, we come out of 12,000 BC. This whole area looks really bleak. It's sort of an ice age, like Azala predicted. But this is where we can find a passageway that's kind of like an elevator teleporter type thing up to a sky bridge to the sky city of Enhasa, the city of dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole area is where the story for me kind of becomes a little less So this game is prided as being like very streamlined, very no fuss. This is where that starts to break down a little bit, but we'll get through it. I think all three of us together with our knowledge of the game.
Yeah.
We run into a strange boy who tells us that the black winds howl and one of us will shortly perish, which is very interesting. I had Robo with me at the time, who immediately goes into calculations on how possible this is.
There we go. C-3PO
and
again.
Ayla just doesn't understand, which it's pretty funny. But we learn more about this boy very soon. It's actually a very cool reveal.
Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned earlier that Ayla can't learn magic because she's from a time before magic exists, and they kind of allude to this being the time where magic is like invented, right? I found it kind of cheapened that like Ayla can't learn magic, and you have this kind of, okay, where did magic come from? And there's even a line where like one of the characters, NPCs you could talk to, says like, how do we possess the skills we have? Who cares? That's like literally a quote from the game, and it's like, but I care. I want to know.
It's set up as sort of a like class system thing where the people that are born with magic live in this area, the city of magic, where it's studied. I think Kajar, and then the people without sort of live on the surface, which we see more of that.
They're treated
soon.
like crap.
Earth dwellers, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice attempt at a class system. I'm kind of glad they didn't try to do more with that, because it would have just messed the flow up.
Yeah.
Right. I guess what I'm getting at is like, why are people born with magic? Like, what happened? What's this? Like, what is it? Who cares? I guess because the game's now telling me it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's kind of crappy. It's a little crappy.
I don't know. I don't mind it when stories like this have magic and don't explain why, because a lot of times their explanation for like why people get magic is not super satisfying. It's why things that like fantasy stories that do explain it in a cool way are like noteworthy. So the fact that magic is studied and learned and passed on or whatever in here, and that's just the way it is, it's okay. But I did like the kind of, like you said, the class system. It's not like, it doesn't become like the point of the game or something, and it's not even really the point of this section of the game, but it is kind of cool how things that happen a little bit, later in the game really hit the bottom people a lot more than the top,
Yeah.
So it is kind of there if you think about it, and the way that the characters that live on the surface look compared to like how gaudy the, city in the clouds is, all that stuff is pretty cool too.
We're heading forward. We go into the city of Zeal, the center of Zeal, and this is where the queen's chambers lie. We learn that the queen hasn't been herself lately, and that the little boy that we met, his name is Janice, his sister Shala went in to meet with her, but that door is locked via a pendant that looks exactly like the one that you have. So we power it up because crystals, and that's pretty much it. And that's how we're able to get in. And the queen is pissed, of course, that we're able to break through. There is a prophet here that says we are the ones who are foretold to bring disaster. And so, of course, the queen orders us to be seized, which leads to a couple of battles that markedly you can lose, and it's fine, which is good because it's a really tough battle.
Is this the golem?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I lost for sure.
Of course. So nobody here beat the golem then, right?
Not this time. No.
Yeah.
No, I was following a guide that told you how to, but it would have just taken so much longer.
Right.
Yeah.
The queen sort of holds you there for a little bit. Janice and Shala happen by, and Janice is initially against freeing you, but they do end up eventually freeing you, mentioning that you could save Melchior. So now we're hearing a familiar name again, all the way back in 10,000 BC. Shala lets you out and asks you to save the Guru of Life, who was sent away for sort of going against the queen. But just as she does this, the prophet comes in and threatens to kill us for meddling. And in exchange for our lives and freedom, he says Shala has to cooperate with him. So they send us into a time gate, and the prophet has Shala seal it shut. So we're back in Ayla's time at this point.
And I just want to I'll just say this now, that Rick, I'm totally with you that this part where you go to Zeal and then a lot of the plot until it's time for like wrapping up side quests and finishing the game is where like the pacing starts to drag. I don't like the character of Queen Zeal at all. And everything that's going on with her story has been explained to me about why it's important. And I don't like it. It's too like, it feels like evil for evil's sake in a game that didn't have a whole lot of that up until now. We've been dealing with Frog's story and stuff like that. Just really don't like this.
Well, don't they get into like the queen being corrupted?
Yeah,
later on. Yeah,
the queen's being corrupted, and
the reading that I took of it was that like the power, the notion of having Lavos's power, harnessing that kind of corrupted her. Right. The evil existed within her, and it just took one little snap to ignite that flame. Was my read on it.
Right, and I'm not arguing against the fact that like this is where the plot drags. This is notably where I was like, gosh, do I have to go through all this? Like, is this? Do I? It kept like, oh, go to the next place, and this is where it started to feel a little bit long in the tooth.
Yeah, this all of the stuff that's going on here, except for a couple of like cool reveals later that would be lost. Like if you cut all of this out and just had, Lavos is here and you could have Lavos emerge on its own. You don't really need this stuff, in my opinion, for the story to be the same. I don't think it would be a whole lot worse without Queen Zeal and all of that stuff.
So just pushing along a little bit, at the end of time, Gaspar, who again, I can't quite remember if we know that's his name yet. I don't think so. He mentions somebody who has the means of moving through time, the wings of time, but he mentions that person's mind has left them, which is good, because we're about to expand upon that. We go back to the Protodome, which I had forgotten all about up until this time, because the door that was there that was locked previously is the same sigil as the pendant from the Queen's chamber. So we have that. So we are going there. We get once we get there, we get these diaries from the Guru of Reason, Balthazar. Another sort of a biblical name here. They sprinkle a couple of these in, giving some background on Lavos that we sort of already know. Mentions that Lavos has claimed this area and sends his spawn out, which are described as a waterfall of death, which I liked a lot. But the Wings of Time, we find that here. We find Balthazar's ship. Balthazar introduces it to us because he copied his memory into the new creature. If we remember from the beginning of the game, we could talk to that new as that old man was kind of wandering around, fixing stuff up, and I think that old man at the time, which was Balthazar's body, mentions Shala in 2300 AD. So that's Balthazar. But his mind is in the new, because news live longer. We named the ship the Epoch because 5 letters and the Wings of Time is too long, I guess. And we're off. So this is our airship. This lets us travel to whatever time period we need, which is super convenient. It's very good.
And may go without saying with an airship, but you can travel within those time periods. You can just fly around the continent and land wherever you want and stuff like that too.
It's about damn time.
It was starting to get cumbersome now that you are continually opening up more and more time periods to go to. Yeah. And I got your joke there, Ryan. I didn't leave you hanging. I got it, man.
Cool.
Somebody described that song to me as peak RA music, or like music solely for college RAs, and I think that's very funny. I know you were making a time reference, but it made me think of the Lizzo song that's really popular.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I don't know.
Oh, that's something that I'd be afraid to put in here for copyright and getting DCMA.
Get this yanked. Yeah.
We're heading to Mount Woe. Before we go there, we get a little more background on like the class system, quote unquote, between the Earthbound people and the magic users. We also learn a little more about the Queen banishing the Guru of Life, who was not into the idea of the queen using this mammon machine, which we learn more about as we go. There are tons of EXP opportunities up here in Mount Woe. It's pretty wild. You can kind of game the system if you need to do some grinding here, which I 100% did, just because I like to. I don't mind grinding. Sometimes I think it's kind of meditative, but this culminates in a fight with Giga Gaia, who can be pretty tricky.
Whoa.
What?
Whoa.
Whoa on Mount Woe.
Oh,
What a name for a mountain, by the way.
Right.
Mount Woe.
Yeah, I'm going to go hiking at Mount Woe this weekend. Going to have a good time. Weather's going to be
Sounds like
nice.
a bad idea.
Yeah.
Well, just like Hecklin Cave, this was named by John Woe. He said, "This is my mountain. My name is John Woe."
He's got a stranglehold on the naming in this game.
I mean, it has a nicer ring to it than Mount Giga Gaia.
Yeah. Those
true.
alliterative G's never sound good. Giga Gaia. There's 3 of them there. Once we beat Giga Gaia, the crystal that he was sort of guarding fades, and turns out Melchior was in there. Melchior is distressed that the queen is so far along in her plans. He says, like we mentioned before, that Lavos is poisoning her mind and sort of overtaking her. But now that we've broken the seal, the mountain sort of starts crashing down. Melchior tells us that we need to stop the queen with the mammon machine at all costs. We can't let her take the machine down to Lavos. And then down with the queen, Shala comes in and says that she will not activate the machine. She is needed to help, activate the machine. But Dalton comes in at that time and sort of takes her hostage, saying that he'll kill her on the spot and that he doesn't give a fuck. He's not playing around. it's pretty good. He single-handedly just knocks everybody back that tries to stand up to him. Melchior gives us the ruby knife at this time, which is made of dreamstone, because this is how we can go after Dalton and the mammon machine.
Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking this sounds like a lot of proper nouns, you're not alone. This is the time where I was like, yep, don't care. Like, tell me who I have to fight, and we're good.
Yeah, I think it was giving the mammon machine a name was what caused me to sort of check out just a little bit. Just a little bit.
It's a pretty dumb name. It doesn't sound great. The Mammon Machine.
Yeah.
We do end up fighting Dalton. It's a super easy fight. He flees once we're done with him, which is fine. So we're making our way down to the Ocean Palace, where everything is going down that we mentioned. The queen does eventually force Shala to activate the mammon machine, which sort of gives her immortality. So she's already too far gone. She can't really be saved. You fight Dalton again. He's surprised you made it this far. He summons the Golem Sisters to fight you, which can be a pretty tricky fight. I don't know if either of you remember it and wanted to comment on it or move past it. Either is fine.
No, I don't remember a whole lot.
Yeah, like I said, this is kind of where I checked out, because even like this, it's just like a bunch of dialogue and stuff happening. And I know that sounds very simplistic here, but it is.
It's
like,
true. It's true.
It's almost like nothing in this part matters, because you have Shala like, I won't activate the machine, I swear to you. What does she do? Activates the machine. What the hell? Just said you wouldn't do that.
Dalton goes to summon something stronger against you, but he has this moment where he's like, I don't want to die before I reach immortality, which, fair, and so he flees. The mammon machine is powering up. When we rush forward to use the ruby knife, which we learn is actually Mazza immune at this time, they kind of combine with it, we stab the machine. It doesn't do the trick, though, because Lavos awakens and we get into a fight with him. You are meant to lose this fight because Lavos immediately does like 7,000 damage with one attack.
Right.
But you can. It is possible to beat him. Not very likely on your first playthrough, but if you're doing a new game plus, you can win. It doesn't change the outcome, but you can win.
So how'd you guys feel about this part?
Oh, I thought it was cool. I love when you're faced with like the end boss early on, and it's just revealed that like you don't stand a chance right now.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
I thought it was very cool, and it definitely subverts expectations. Yeah.
especially with the scene coming up. Lavos was a little stronger here than he is at the end of the game, which I thought was kind of weird. But I mean, it works to a point. It's fine. I liked it. As you're laying there kind of defeated, the prophet reveals himself to... Oh, I have a typo here. I said it reveals himself to be Lavos. The prophet reveals himself to be Magus, who has endured all of this time solely to destroy Lavos. But he can't hurt him, and the queen orders Lavos to attack.
Yeah.
All hope seems completely lost. Everybody is on the ground. Everybody is hurt. And this is a pretty famous scene. Chrono stands to defend everybody against Lavos by himself, and he's just promptly killed.
Without pomp and circumstance, just like vaporized.
Yeah. It was,
which I liked. I liked that it wasn't made into like this big, like, emotional moment.
right, like people holding his body and things like that. Yeah, no, it was. I thought this was great. Like, as much as I didn't like the lead-in to this, the moment itself was like mind-blowing. Very, very unexpected when I first played through the game.
Yeah, unexpected, but, and I have a feeling we're going to talk about this, I think that they count on you caring more about Chrono than I do.
Yeah, that was where I was sitting. What I like about it is that, you know, if we're reading or hearing or listening to a hero's story and this moment comes, what do we expect? We expect the hero to triumph. And what I like about this is that, no, it takes the logical approach. Like, Chrono is a kid standing up to an eldritch horror. He dies immediately. Like, there's no hope.
Right. Yeah.
I like that. But I agree with you, Dave. Like, it expects us to have an attachment to Chrono, which we have through force because we are Chrono. That's who we're playing as. But Chrono, this is, again, I don't mean to harp on the silent protagonist thing, but if Chrono were not a silent protagonist, if he were Faye from Xenogears, if he were Tidus from Final Fantasy X, if he were somebody...
If he were Frog.
If he were... Straight up. If Frog died, I'd be very sad.
I'd be beside myself. Yeah.
But if Chrono had a character, like, it would have made me feel much more. And this could just be a me thing or a me and you thing, Dave. I don't know how Ryan feels because I'm going on without letting him talk. But like the blank slate character, for me at this time in 2022, it just doesn't work for me.
So like. Yeah. I guess I read it a little differently. First, I want to also say the Magus reveal, super cool.
That he was the prophet?
Yeah. Well, that, like, he was on your side.
Okay, because I was going to say, like, we weren't...
Well, he had different means for the same goal, right?
We don't learn right now who he is, right? No, that's a question. Like, I could have messed up my notes. Do we learn that Magus is actually another person that we've met before? Right now, or is that later?
No.
We don't learn who Magus is, but we learn that the prophet, like he not unrobes. He doesn't. He
disrobes.
Takes his robe off. Yeah, he takes his hood down. You can see who he is. He disrobes.
I'll recognize that anywhere. That's Magus. Yeah. Sorry, but so I don't think the Chrono, to me, and maybe I'm reading into it incorrectly, but Chrono's death to me wasn't supposed to make you feel emotion beyond shock. Like, it's still very effective because it's shocking. It doesn't have to be that I'm like sad over it. It's just like, crap, like, I can't believe they did that. And I don't think it necessarily has to have an effect beyond that. Just the surprise that they do that very thing and kill the guy the game's named after. No, well, not really, but yeah.
But with where the plot goes after this, I think you are meant to care about Chrono.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that's where we're going. But back to the like silent protagonist thing, like, I think it is just because Chrono is such a blank slate. Like, I can think of other silent protagonists where if they died in a game, I would feel a lot more like, you know, Link. If Link died, I would feel more than Chrono. Or like
he emotes more.
We were talking about Persona, like Joker in Persona 5, he doesn't talk. I think you can pick dialogue with him, but he doesn't talk. And, you know, I would feel a lot more if something happened to him. There's more like, it's just that blank slate where it's like, you know, he's you feel a certain attachment because he's your avatar as you're walking around, but beyond that, I don't really like. It would have been almost more affecting if it was anyone else.
Well, so
that died.
Have you played Link to the Past?
I have, yeah.
From the same era, would you feel like? So you say Link, but I think you're thinking of like 3D Links, where he like
that's
emotes
true. Yeah,
more.
He's
and
more
things
expressive
like that.
in 3D,
right? Like
for sure.
Would I be upset if 16-bit Link ate it? Like, no, probably not. But I'd be shocked. So like,
yeah,
I do think it's somewhat a product of that era.
Yeah, it's just like we're moving on to what
Right.
we have to do next, and that kind of assumes that you want whatever's coming next. They assume that like, yeah, of course, this is what I want too.
Right.
I want to bring Chrono back.
Square played with this idea at the same time too. Spoilers for Final Fantasy VI. Please fast forward if you don't want to hear that. But they play this idea too at the end of the World of Light when Kefka wins and essentially destroys the world. You know, you're not meant to. It's not necessarily a feeling of like I'm so sad. It's like, oh shit, like the bad guy won.
Right.
So I think you're right, Ryan. I think the emotional attachment to Chrono is maybe less on display here than the subversion of expectations, which was effective, I thought, because we don't get to play it. You could go through the rest of the game without playing as Chrono.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about how to get Chrono back, because I think it is dumb as hell, but we can we can get there. So Shala sends us all away, including Magus, using the last of her power. Presumably, she dies here. Lavos just completely destroys everything at this point. You crash to Earth with a tidal wave, the city does, that sort of descends upon the earthbound people, which kind of destroys a lot of them, but it also brings down a lot of the survivors that used magic from the upper cities. Now everybody's on the same field, and this is where where some of the dialogue comes in, where they're like, you know, it doesn't matter if we have magic at this point, like we're all in the same field. It reminds me of the one episode of The Sopranos where Paulie and Christopher are lost in the woods of New Jersey in the winter at night.
Oh, it's
and he's just
one of the best episodes.
And he's just like, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a captain or not. Right now, we're just two assholes lost in the woods. That's kind of like what's happening here.
Oh! Do that by your own window. I don't want to smell your piss.
Fuck you.
What did you say?
You heard me.
Don't make me pull a rank on you, kid.
Fuck you, Paulie. Captain or no captain, right now we're just two assholes lost in the woods.
Do yourself a favor, Chrissy, and go back to fucking sleep.
Magic or no, like you're all in trouble. It's cool. I like that they don't dwell on it and try to make this a social commentary in this particular game, but it is cool.
So I haven't seen a ton of Sopranos, but I have seen that episode with like the Polish guy, and oh my god, it's so good, dude. It's so good. They're so out of their element, that whole episode. I love it.
That's a standalone that you could just watch without watching the whole series. It's so good. You get into another fight with Dalton. The queen is gone at this point. You're able to sort of deflect his attack, which frustrates him. At which point he says, "What's that behind you?" and then sucker punches you, which is honestly pretty funny.
Your shoe's untied.
And it's pretty much what it is. But you wake up and all of your stuff is gone, and you're on the ship, the Blackbird, and you need to find your way around the interior to find all of your stuff. This is where Ayla comes in big time handy, because Ayla doesn't attack with equipment. She attacks with her fist. So if you have Ayla in your party, you kind of cheat your way through one hurdle, and you're able to much easier get through this whole area, which is what I did, because Ayla, at this point, next to, I think, maybe Frog, was my strongest melee fighter.
I like this section a lot, where you're kind of infiltrating it. Once you figure out, you know, where you can go without setting off an alarm, I really like this part. And it's kind of surprising to me that I do this much, because it could get frustrating. But yeah, I had a good time sneaking around.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. A little element of tactical espionage in your JRPG. Does
you
does
can
you some
Metal
good.
Gear.
You can like look through vents and stuff. Yeah.
It's basically Metal Gear. Otacon shows up. It's great. You go through some more fights, but we get a scene with Dalton, who is super proud of some. He's building a ship, and he's proud of it, called the Aero Dalton Imperial, which is actually just the epoch that he stole from you. before I thought this was really funny. Before he takes off, he breaks the fourth wall to change the soundtrack, which I actually laughed out loud. It was pretty good.
I really like Dalton. Just saying.
He's a fun character.
Yeah, for sure. They had fun with that one.
You are thrown directly into a boss fight with him, but just like the last time, it's kind of a joke. He tries to resummon the Golem Lord, but it doesn't work, so he runs away. There's a scene of you, like kind of you and your team kind of desperately trying to fly the Epoch without crashing. You do end up shooting down the Blackbird and landing safely. Everybody wants to look for Chrono, so that's what you're off to do. So how do we do this? Are we going to go straight through, or do we talk about how we get Chrono back now? Oh, actually, there's more story stuff, so I guess we could probably just keep going. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Anyways, you head up to North Cape, you encounter Magus. Instead of Magus, I'm saying it both ways. Instead of attacking you, he actually recounts that he used to live in Zeal, that's now at the bottom of the ocean.
What?
Yeah. This is where you see a flashback of Lavos gaining power and opening the time gates, sending the three gurus, Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar, into their three respective time periods. But at this time, it also sends Janus back in time, where he meets Ozzy. And this is where we learn that Janus is Magus.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Very
recognize
cool
that Magus anywhere.
Which was it's got that dimple on the left side. It's a very cool reveal. I thought it was really neat.
Yeah.
You
so
can
did you not see this coming though?
No.
Are you serious?
Yes.
When I play games like this, I try not to think about what's coming next. I really do, because it doesn't bring me joy. At the same time, though, I think at this point I was still a little eyes glazing, from everything that just happened, that I wasn't thinking about it.
So the only reason I remember, even when I was younger, there's a line that Magus says in his castle, and it's something about dark winds or something. And then literally the next place you go, you talk to a little kid who talks about dark winds, and I was like, oh, that's got to be Magus.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like I immediately knew. And so it's a cool reveal, don't get me wrong, and I'm not taking anything away from that, especially if you didn't see it coming, but it didn't. I remember it never surprising me like it was meant to.
Yeah. I'm kind of like Rick. I had an element of I don't like the Zeal section very much, so I wasn't paying as much attention. But also the bigger reason is if there is foreshadowing or things like that in a game or a movie, I never catch it. Absolutely never. So I am always surprised by things like this. And
That's
frankly,
cool.
It's kind of cool that everything works on me. Every twist gets me.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, I have a good time.
Writers love him.
Yeah.
You can choose to bring Magus with you or fight him.
Yeah.
The pro tip is to just bring him with you, because at this point, why wouldn't you? He's on your side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's really strong too. In some of the tougher fights later in the game, it was very helpful to have him on your team.
Absolutely.
There's another nice little touch where if you go visit the commons with Magus in your party, the little cat that only followed Janus around, starts following Magus and meowing at him. It's very sweet.
It's one of the only times in this game where I felt a pang of real emotion when I saw the cat. I was like, oh my God, the cat recognized. Oh my God, that is the cutest thing. And for a long stretch of the game, ever since the last big frog moment, I was like, okay, moving along. Oh, Chrono got vaporized. That's surprising, but I'm not sad about that. But when the cat, Ryan, do you have pets?
Yes, I have pets.
Yeah.
I'm not a monster, Dave.
Huh?
I'm not a monster. I have pets.
Yeah. But I know, I love my pet. I know, Rick, you love your cat.
Yeah, and she's biting me as we're talking about this.
Yeah. I said, you love your cat. Lovely. Everything about her. So, when this happened, I was like, oh my God, that's I love that.
For sure.
So we're heading back to the end of time. This is where we need Gaspar's help. He's a little coy. He's a coy boy about being the guru of time. He recognizes Magus if you have him with you in your party. This is where Gaspar plays a special song in memory of Chrono called Memories of Chrono, which is the same piece that's associated with Marl. There's some this is where I'm wondering if we're not having like a Xenogears moment where I don't remember the term, like not the composer, but the person who decides what piece goes where is just going a little willy-nilly. I didn't look into it honestly, but it struck me because like you look up Marl's theme and you're going to get this theme that is Memories of Chrono, but they're not like Chrono and Marl are not intertwined in any more of a way than Frog and Chrono. So I was like, maybe it doesn't work on me quite as much.
I like how you put that though. Like they play this song in memory of Chrono called Memories of Chrono. It's a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
It's a bit on the nose.
They're like, we were supposed to order 57 songs from the composer. We only got 56. What can we use again?
We go back to visit Balthazar. He says that Death Peak has the power to bring back the dead and hatch an egg, but you'll need a double doll. So now I don't necessarily want to go through the steps to getting Chrono back.
Nah.
But let's talk about what you do.
Well, let's talk about how the Death Peak brings back the dead.
Yeah.
That seems so counterintuitive.
Ironic, isn't it?
Last weekend I went hiking at Mount Woe. This week we're going to Death Peak. We're going to have a good time. Weather's supposed to be great. I can't wait. Leaves are changing.
It's beautiful up there this time of year.
I know we didn't want to like go through the steps, but I just want to say the mini game you do to get the Chrono doll fucking sucks, and I hated it. I kept messing it up.
Yeah, so you could have got this a long time ago. To get the doll, you have to go back to the Millennial Fair and play one of those mini games.
Yeah, it's a Simon Says mini game, and I hate it.
People of our age group love the Millennial Fair, though.
God damn it, Ryan.
Because we're millennials.
Oh.
And in case you're wondering, I barely made the cut for that.
After you get the double, you need to take it up to Death's Peak with this egg called the Chrono Trigger.
And credits.
It's essentially what it does is it takes you back to the moment of Chrono's death. You switch out the doll for Chrono, and that's how you get him back. I think this is so dumb. They should have just left Chrono dead. Truly.
He wouldn't have suffered other than not being able to use Luminaire late in the game. It's okay, so we're dealing with mystical forces here, and you mean to tell me that whatever it is that's controlling time or whatever magic system you're fucking with to bring Chrono back, you're telling me that a doll of Chrono is going to fool it into like allowing him to continue living? Like, if you just think about it for a second, it's like, yeah, it's okay.
All right, so first you're dealing with time, right? So like, why can't you just go to a time where Chrono's still alive and bring him back? Like, that would be a solution that fits a little better than this. There's also magic that exists. You can incorporate that, which I guess like maybe they did in some way with this, but it is a very wishy-washy reason and way to bring him back. I think there wasn't, he's the main character, right? So they felt like they had to. I actually appreciate this because it kind of sets an expectation for JRPGs, right? That like, oh, if a character dies, they come back, especially a major one, right? And spoiler alert for Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
But like after playing Chrono Trigger, I felt like Aeris was going to come back. Like I expected it to happen, and it never did. And that kind of blew my mind. And it was partially because of prior games like Chrono Trigger, where I'm like, oh, this means nothing, right? And then it ended up being permanent.
That wasn't where I thought you were going with that, but okay.
Yeah, same.
That's interesting.
Where'd you think I was going with it?
Cloud.
Yeah, I thought you were going to do some Cloud Zack stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It reminds me of another character death in Persona 3 where it's like you can bring them back if you do a special certain set of commands. It's like I stop being afraid to hurt your viewers. Like it is okay. Like
Right.
if your viewers are sad that a character is dead, then you've done your job creating that character. It's good.
And we've already established that Chrono doesn't really play much of a role in this story. Like as a character, he doesn't contribute to anything besides being strong sword guy. So having this story continue with Frog and Marl and Luca and Robo and Ayla, I guess, and Magus, like mourning Chrono, but also continuing the task would have been just as cool, if not cooler.
Outside of Chrono, like the whole spiel to get Chrono back, you can go to the end game right now. All of the side quests for characters and all of their character development, as well as probably the most famous scene in the game, the campfire scene, it's all hidden behind side quests, which is weird to me. But you know, if they were going for a short, tight JRPG, I kind of get it. But at any rate, we are going to head to the end game, to Death Peak, Black Omen.
Real quick, can we? Do you mind if I just like bring up a couple of side quests that I thought were cool?
Yeah,
like,
by all means.
Yeah. So before we go to the Black Omen, there's a couple of side quests that I think were some of the more affecting story content in the game. You get a resolution for Frog by following his side quest, talking to the ghost of Cyrus and basically like making peace with what happened and stuff like that. And then Luca's side quest was pretty brutal, actually, and like brutal for me in particular, because I kind of repeated what happened to Luca in the game. So she's watching this, flashback of watching her mom get in a horrible machinery accident and die. And you can move during that cutscene and you can like save her mom. I didn't know that though, because I thought I was watching a cutscene. So Luca just watched her die again. And that was how that quest finished.
Yeah. Luca's especially is very, very good. And if you're going to do anybody's side quest, I kind of recommend Luca's.
Mm-hmm.
Like Robo's is okay. He meets a little sweetheart, and
you fight a character named Mother Brain in Luca or in Robo's thing, a little Nintendo thing.
Frogs is also very cool with the resolution with Glenn.
Yeah.
With Cyrus. But Luca's especially, getting to see like why Luca is so interested in machines is, it's weird that they hid this behind optional content, but at this point in 2022, like everybody knows where to find it.
Yeah, that's true. I hope that people are not as shy about checking a guide as I am, because I would have missed all this stuff. I don't think I would have seen I don't think I would have known how to do Frog or Luca's side quests if I wasn't reading a guide, because as I've established before, I'm not like, when I'm presented with a new time where I can control the party, I'm not going to go to all the available places and see what's new. It's just possible, not the type of game player that I am.
Yeah. I mean, so one thing I brought up in the first part of this Chrono Trigger episodes was that you don't have to grind, right? It respects your time a little more than like Final Fantasy VI, but you bring up a really good point. Like I played it with a guide and I probably would feel like crap. I just have to wander and find out what's new and what I can do at a point like this in the game, which wouldn't feel good. It wouldn't feel good.
And it wouldn't feel good to find out after the fact that there's actually more of Frog's story, because you would think like Frog gets a resolution if you fight or let Magus join the party. That's a resolution for Frog because he kind of makes peace with what's going on. But then there's more, and more Frog's story is good, and Luca's story is good, and that campfire scene is great, and all of that stuff is totally missable. And I would have been like, oh man, I missed some of the like really good story content had I not been using a guide.
The justification at the time was probably that the game is so short that a new game plus was probably expected. So they would have expected you to just go and try all these different things. Did you say that already? Am I just repeating you? Okay, you had a look, and I was like, "Oh my god, did I zone out and just miss that?"
No, the idea of an expected New Game Plus is just completely misses me. Like, no.
At the time, I mean, there wasn't as much to play.
Well, at the time, there was not New Game Plus. Like, that was not a thing.
Yeah.
Period. Like, this was one of the first games to ever do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they would have been more. Had you been there, Dave, you would have been into it.
Oh, I was there. I was 5. I was watching Power Rangers.
I was doing keg stands. No, okay.
Dave was the coolest 5-year-old I've ever met.
Yeah.
and
It's
I've
all
met
been downhill since then. I peaked at 5.
I don't know, dude. I saw that hair in your college ID, buddy. I think
That's true. Yeah.
I think you might have peaked later in life.
You're at the end game. You're in the Black Omen. This is where you face off against Queen Zeal. You go through a couple of different stages with her, fighting just her, fighting her fused with the Mammon machine, fighting her as this sort of human monster hybrid. But after you take care of her all 3 times, she calls Lavos to take her place. So now you've got to deal with Lavos. And he's got 9 different attack modes. Which sounds like a lot. I'm actually not a big fan of this whole ending sequence. The good news is the 9 attack modes are going to be based off of the bosses you fought before. It telegraphs them all with a picture of them. And they're all as strong as they were at that time. So it shouldn't take that much time cumulatively. When you beat him, he does his sort of trademark scream, and you're able to then go in his shell. And this is where it loses me. Because Lavos to me was cool as hell as this horrible monster. But then you go into his shell to fight his 2nd and 3rd form, and he looks like Cooler from Dragon Ball Z. What? Like, why are we in a nesting doll? A Lavos nesting doll. It was so cool to see like this horrible being that's already, we've seen how strong he is, and he caused the extinction of the reptites. He's this monster, and then he's just some purple dude that's as tall as us, like actually.
Yeah, especially the last form.
Right, the second form was cool. Like, I still thought the second form was alien enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The last form was the humanoid one with the 2 little bits around him, right?
And it has in my opinion, for a final phase of a final boss, it has a really dumb gimmick, and it just doesn't look very cool. Can
you remind me of the gimmick? Because the way I have it written in the notes, I'm not sure I could describe it.
It's so there's the humanoid one, and then there's the 2 bits, and we've all fought the JRPG bosses where the 2 bits are the satellites, and the body is the main thing, and you have to kill the body. That's not what this is. You have to hit the one on the right that's just like a little bit, and the humanoid part is not the main form of the monster.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's very lame. It takes a lot of like strategy to keep your party alive, and because if you kill the bits, they resurrect after a time. It takes a lot of strategy to beat it. I was using a guide because I'm, Sigma gamer, but the gimmick of like, if you don't know that you're attacking the one on the right, you're probably going to be frustrated and or die, and then I don't know, but I assume if you die, you got to fight all fucking 16 phases leading up to that. I assume.
I didn't test that theory, and I don't want to.
No, but this is a JRPG from 1995, so probably.
Definitely agree with you, Rick. The first form was the coolest looking one. It's just like what you would expect Lavos to be.
And I can't remember, did they oh, never mind. I don't remember Final Fantasy VI well enough to like call out specific points of it. Once you beat him, you get sucked out of the area and you wake up home. A soldier is sort of taking you to the king to carry out your sentence. And at first it seems like, you've somehow gone back to where you were being tried for the kidnapping of Marl.
Mm-hmm.
This is so fucking like 90s feel-good movie.
Yeah.
But quickly we see all of your other friends from all of the time periods, like Doan and Kino and et cetera, et cetera. They come in to stick up for you and tell what a good person you are because Luca brought them all there. And then they have a moonlight parade in your honor and
fireworks and Ewoks playing drums.
Literally fireworks. By the way, we should say this is the quote-unquote main ending. You won't get this ending if you didn't save Chrono. If you fight Lavos at various times, you'll get different endings. This is the quote-unquote canon ending.
Yeah. Also, as far as I know, the Black Omen, like boss rush and fighting Queen Zeal, that's optional too. You can just go fight Lavos instead of doing that.
Oh shit, you're right.
Yeah, so if you don't do that, I don't think you'll get this ending either.
Oh, interesting.
I admittedly did not putz around with getting as many endings as I could.
No, me either.
I want to replay this game at a later date. I'm all Chrono Triggered out for right now, but I want to come back to it at a later time when I can, boot up my save file again and go through it and get some of the different endings, like the programmer's ending. I've heard it's pretty funny. Some endings I've heard are kind of dumb, with just like the women talking about the men, commenting on how dreamy they are or something. I don't know.
I heard the programmer ending's pretty cool though.
Yeah, same here. I think that's new for the ported version. It's not on the SNES version. One by one, everybody says their goodbyes to you at the time gate, and good old Ted Woolsey even got a princess kissing the frog joke in there, which is great for him. Right at the last, I kind of like this. I don't like that I like this, but I kind of like this. Right at the end, Chrono's mom comes running towards you because your cat is running away. And the cat accidentally jumps into the time gate, and so does your mom. And then the portal closes, and you're like, oh no, it looks like we have another adventure.
Sequel time.
And then they made a sequel, and it wasn't about this.
No cat.
I thought that was kind of cute. I kind of like that. Very silly, but...
The ending where they're all saying goodbye to each other was really sweet, I thought. Like, really, really nice ending, because these are, for the most part, very likable characters, and they form a nice little group. It's a tight group. There's, 6 characters if you have Magus, 7 maybe? I didn't count. But anyway, they're all saying goodbye to each other, and it's, like, specifically, like, until Chrono's mom goes in the portal, I got the distinct impression that they're all saying goodbye. They're going back to their respective times, and they will never see each other again. They're making peace with that at this time. And they even make a comment that because they defeated Lavos, Robo's future is in, we don't know what's on the other side of Robo's future.
Right.
So they're like trying to say like, Robo, you're going to the nice, sunny future and stuff, but we don't know that.
Yeah.
So it's a really like bittersweet goodbye because, like I said, I got the very distinct feeling these characters will never see each other again. Like, not possible.
You bring up a really good point, because I think they even have a line of dialogue where it's like, oh, wait, like, Robo's future doesn't exist.
Yeah. Not the way we knew it, at least.
Right.
So
I like to think he just gets sent and, like, nothing. That's it.
He's floating.
Like, how do you go back to a future that never was?
Right.
You don't.
The way that the portals work in this game, I think he'd just pop out at whatever's going on in 2300 or whatever the year is. But
probably,
yeah.
Well, I don't know. We saw that at the beginning with the kidnapping of the princess and them, or the queen, and them thinking that Marl was the queen, and which then caused Marl to not exist.
This isn't a game where traveling time means you're going to meet duplicate versions of yourself, except for that like beginning thing.
So wouldn't Robo... Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I'm sorry to go farther down this tangent. If that's the case, wouldn't Robo have disappeared as soon as you defeated Lavos?
You would think so, right? Because he would have never been created in the first place.
It's the Marty McFly thing.
Assuming there's no robots in the future. There might be robots in the happy future.
Yeah.
You have to play Detroit Become Human to find out, Rick.
Stop.
No, thank you.
Rick is the biggest David Cage fan.
Yeah, just he won't shut up about how much he loves David Cage. So I feel like I have to bring my my own David Cage knowledge to the podcast. But I really like this ending. Like, did you guys like it too?
Yeah. I mean, after I was burping. That's why I took a second to respond. Yeah, I mean, after the Lavos fight, I don't like the Lavos fight. But the ending itself,
Mhm.
aside from the parade, I think is good.
Yeah.
I think the parade is really dumb, but you know.
I think it's fine. Like, it's a product of the 90s. It was fun for the time. Like, none of this really bothered me. Even the boss fight, like, going back to it now, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. 3 forms, really. Like, it's a bit excessive, right? But it's a good ending. It wraps up everything nicely. And like you said, the conversations between the characters are meaningful enough that it doesn't feel cheap and rushed in any way. Yeah, I enjoyed the ending a lot.
Any final thoughts on Chrono Trigger? I kind of peppered mine through as we went. I think it's a great first JRPG. I think it's very forgiving to beginners. I think the pacing is great if you're not familiar with the genre. I personally do not hold it as being the greatest JRPG of all time. My own personal opinion is that a lot of that is rose-colored glasses, but it is certainly deserving of being called one of the best of all time. It's very good. I strongly recommend playing it if you haven't.
Yeah, I have a 1-sentence review of Chrono Trigger.
Oh, look who did his homework.
Not really. It's not really, but
Oh, just make it up on the spot. That's
In
what I
short,
do half the time.
the scope of Chrono Trigger is incredible for the time, and although it gets caught up in a lot of typical JRPG elements, it was also the pioneer for many of those tropes. So not really a review. To sum it all up, it's a great game. I could definitely see why it's regarded as the best RPG of all time, because it is extremely accessible. And if you have not played Chrono Trigger and are now at the end of part 2, I would say play it. I don't know why you made it this far without doing so.
Yeah.
If you have, then you are a loyal and devout follower of the show. And if you're not on the Patreon, then you should be.
Yeah, we salute you. Yeah, I kind of agree. And like, I did my own episode about Chrono Trigger and then these two. So I've had Chrono Trigger on the brain for like the last 4 months or so. And I think where I came out of that is that I agree with you, Rick. This is not really approaching my favorite JRPGs of all time, but I do understand why so many people would grow up, play this game like during their childhood or teenage years or something, and grow up with the idea that this is their favorite JRPG of all time. I get that now. I understand why. So it's definitely worth a play. I recommend it to anyone who likes JRPGs, and I agree with you that it's a great like first one, especially if you like maybe for a newer JRPG fan who got hooked on Persona 5 and wants to go play some older ones, some influential ones. Like this is a great place to start if you're going to ride that history train.
For those people, I would recommend the Live Alive remake before I recommend Chrono Trigger, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, you've been singing that game's praises this whole time. I got to try that.
Yeah, I haven't played that at all.
It's definitely not as refined as Chrono Trigger is, but it does a whole lot of very interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we made it through. We had to add an episode, but we did it. I'm glad that we got to cover this on the show, and I wanted to thank both of you again for joining me for a second time, taking the time out of your busy lives and schedules. We did plenty of plugging last time, but I want to give you the floor again to plug your stuff as heavily or as little as you would like. So I think Dave went first last time. So Ryan, do you want to plug the very, very good show List Off podcast to my listeners?
I think you just did. It's List Off Podcast. It's available anywhere, everywhere you get your podcast. Rick, thanks so much for having me on, man. I can only hope that I did Chrono Trigger some justice, some semblance of justice, because it does deserve it. But yeah, I really appreciate it. It was a great time.
Yeah, me too. So like I said, before on part 1, hopefully if you're listening to this, you listen to part 1, but I have a gaming show called Tales From The Backlog. Each episode is talking about a particular game in depth, and yeah, hope you check it out. Thanks again, Rick. Like, I know you said taking time out of our schedules and stuff, but like the opportunity to talk to you guys for another couple hours about a good game, what more could I want? Really appreciate it. And good to talk with Ryan, as always.
Same, man. Love you guys.
You too, man.
And I'll save the plugs for my stuff for this time. This is a bonus episode coming out, so you'll have plenty of other opportunities. Go listen. You know where to find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Patreon, all of that. Email, I suppose, too. But that's it. I think we could finally wrap this up. Now, I wonder what song I could play us out on.